Before we begin, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because the story you're about to hear isn't just about betrayal, family, and greed. It's about what happens when the people who spent years overlooking you suddenly realize you're the one person standing between them and everything they want. Sometimes the quietest person in the room sees the most, and sometimes the people who laugh at you today end up regretting it tomorrow. Stay with me until the end because every detail matters, and trust me, this story doesn't go where you think it will. My name is Emma Carter, and I was 33 years old the night my father looked across his own father's birthday table and told me I didn't deserve to carry our family name. My brother Ethan laughed. Not a nervous laugh, not the uncomfortable chuckle people give when they don't know what else to do. He actually clapped. 3 slow, deliberate claps. Like he was applauding a performance. Like humiliating me in front of the entire family was something worth celebrating. The room went silent. Every conversation stopped. Forks froze halfway to mouths. People glanced from him to me, waiting for tears, waiting for anger, waiting for me to finally break apart after years of being treated like I didn't matter. But I didn't. I sat there calmly and folded my napkin beside my plate. Because 3 days earlier, I had discovered something hidden inside a cream-colored folder, something that neither my father nor my brother knew I had seen. And as I looked around that table, I realized they were walking confidently toward a disaster they had built with their own hands. What happened that night changed everything. But to understand why, you need to know a little about my family. I work as a municipal engineer in the town of Brookhaven. My job isn't glamorous. I inspect bridges. I evaluate drainage systems. I review infrastructure plans. Most people couldn't care less about what I do. Nobody posts pictures online celebrating a properly designed stormwater system. Nobody throws parties because a bridge remains structurally sound. But I like knowing that something I worked on today will still be standing decades from now. I've always been that kind of person. Quiet, reliable, practical. The person who solves problems without needing credit for it. Unfortunately, my family never saw those qualities as strengths. To them, I was simply the daughter who wasn't Ethan. Ethan Carter had always been the star. Growing up, he was handsome, confident, charismatic, and loud. People noticed him whenever he entered a room. Teachers loved him. Neighbors praised him. My parents practically worshipped him. If Ethan got a B on a test, my mother celebrated. If I got straight A's, she'd ask why one score wasn't higher. That wasn't bitterness talking. It was simply the truth. In our family, Ethan was the future. I was background decoration. By the time I reached adulthood, I'd stopped expecting anything different. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday evening through our family group chat. My mother sent it. Grandpa Henry's 81st birthday, Saturday at 6 p.m. Then she added another message. Please bring something that photographs nicely. I remember staring at that sentence for several seconds. Not bring your favorite memory. Not bring a meaningful gift. Not even bring yourself. Bring something that photographs nicely. That was my mother in a single sentence. Appearance always came first. I lived alone in a townhouse 15 minutes away. Far enough to enjoy peace. Close enough that I couldn't completely escape family obligations. The weekend before the birthday dinner, I'd already promised my grandfather I'd help fix a stubborn office door at the workshop. The door had been sticking every summer for nearly 10 years. So on Saturday morning, I packed my tools and drove over. That workshop meant more to me than almost anything else in my life. 50 years earlier, my grandfather Henry Carter had built it from nothing. What started as a small training center eventually became Carter's Skills Academy. The place helped struggling teenagers learn practical trades: welding, woodworking, construction, electrical work, skills that could give someone a future. Every year, dozens of young people graduated from that program and found stable careers. My grandfather loved every one of them. To him, the workshop wasn't a business. It was a mission, and to me, it was the one place where effort mattered more than appearances. The moment I arrived that morning, I felt something strange. The parking lot looked emptier than usual. The building felt quieter, almost hollow. I couldn't explain why. But the feeling stayed with me. After fixing the office door, I walked through the main training area. Normally, the place buzzed with activity. Not today. There were barely a dozen students. The emptiness bothered me. Later, I asked Linda Brooks, who managed enrollment, whether attendance had dropped. She frowned. Actually, applications have been disappearing. I stopped walking. What do you mean disappearing? She shrugged. We keep getting reports from students saying they applied, but their paperwork never reaches us. A cold sensation crept into my stomach. Applications don't simply vanish. Someone makes them vanish. But who and why? At the time, I didn't have enough information to answer that question. I wish I had. Because the answer would have explained everything. That afternoon, I arrived at my parents' house for the birthday celebration. The moment I stepped inside, I remembered why I preferred living alone. The entire family crowded around my mother's phone, admiring photos of Ethan's new house, the giant kitchen, the oversized garage, the expensive renovations. Every image triggered another round of praise. Look at that island. Look at those cabinets. Look how successful he's become. Nobody noticed I'd entered. Not at first. Eventually, my mother glanced up. Oh, Emma, you made it. Like there had been genuine uncertainty. Like I might have gotten lost driving to a house I'd visited hundreds of times. Good to see you too, I replied. My father stood near the kitchen counter holding a glass of bourbon. He looked me up and down. Work boots, simple jeans, no makeup, no designer handbag. His expression said everything. Still inspecting other people's projects, he asked. I nodded. Someone has to. A few cousins laughed. My father smirked. My mother took a sip of wine. Emma spends her life measuring what other people build. More laughter. The familiar kind. The kind that wasn't quite cruel enough to challenge. But wasn't kind either. I smiled politely. After years of experience, I'd learned something important. Correcting people like that never changes their minds. It only exhausts you. So I let it go. From across the room, I spotted Ethan standing on the patio. He had a phone pressed against his ear. The moment he noticed me looking, he turned away. His shoulders tensed. His voice dropped. And just before the sliding door closed, I heard 3 words. The South property. Then he laughed, too loudly, too suddenly, the way people laugh when they're hiding something. At the time, I didn't know exactly what the South property referred to, but something inside me immediately paid attention. The same instinct that helps me notice structural problems before anyone else sees them. Something wasn't right. And for the first time all evening, I stopped feeling annoyed and started feeling concerned. Because the South property wasn't just land. It was the 6 acres beneath Carter Skills Academy, the workshop. My grandfather's life's work. And suddenly my brother was talking about it in secret. That was the moment everything began. And by the end of the night, I would discover a secret that would force me to choose between protecting my family and protecting the truth. What I found 3 days later, inside that cream-colored folder, would reveal a plan so selfish, so calculated, that even I struggled to believe it. And the worst part? The people responsible were sitting at the same dinner table pretending to celebrate my grandfather, while quietly preparing to destroy everything he had spent 50 years building. The next 3 days changed everything. Not because I confronted anyone, not because I exposed some massive secret, and not because I suddenly became brave. The truth is, I did exactly what I'd always done. I paid attention. And that turned out to be enough. The morning after the birthday invitation, I stopped by the workshop before work. My grandfather had asked me to look at the office door again because it still wasn't closing properly. I arrived just after 7. The building was quiet. Most people wouldn't have noticed anything unusual. But I did. The parking lot was emptier. The training floor felt lifeless. Even the energy of the place seemed different. As I worked on the door hinges, my eyes wandered toward a desk in the corner office. A cream-colored folder sat on top. Nothing special about that, except I had never seen it before. And it was sitting on a desk Ethan had recently started using. At first, I ignored it. Then curiosity got the better of me. Not because I was snooping. Because engineers are trained to investigate things that don't fit. And lately, too many things weren't fitting. The disappearing applications, the quiet conversations, the mention of the South property, the strange tension every time the workshop's future came up. So I opened the folder and instantly wished I hadn't. Inside was a letter of intent, a purchase agreement, a commercial development proposal. The buyer was a large development company. The property listed was the 6-acre parcel underneath Carter Skills Academy. My grandfather's land. My hands went cold. I kept reading. The purchase price was enormous. Millions. Enough money to make most people stop asking questions. Then I reached a sentence that made my stomach drop. Property shall be delivered vacant. Existing vocational training operations shall cease prior to closing. Cease. Not relocate, not expand, not improve, end, shut down, disappear. 50 years of work erased with a single sentence. I turned another page, and there it was, my brother's signature, already signed, already approved, as though the decision had already been made. Clipped to the folder was a handwritten note. Dad agrees. Need Grandpa before Saturday. I stared at those words, for what felt like forever. Need Grandpa before Saturday. The birthday dinner. That wasn't a celebration. It was a setup. They planned to get my grandfather surrounded by family, emotional, distracted, grateful, and then slide paperwork in front of him. They were counting on him signing without realizing what he was giving away. I photographed every page, every single one. Then I carefully returned the folder exactly where I'd found it. When I got back to my truck, I just sat there, trying to process what I'd discovered. My own father, my own brother, trying to sell the workshop, trying to shut down the program, trying to profit from the destruction of the one thing my grandfather loved most. And somehow they believed nobody would notice. What they didn't realize was that I already had. For the next 2 days I kept quiet. I gathered information. I checked public records. I reviewed property filings. I verified every detail. And the deeper I looked, the worse it became. The development company had already started preparing plans. Surveyors had already inspected the land. My brother had already paid deposits. Everything was moving forward. The only thing missing was my grandfather's signature. Without it, the deal was worthless. With it, the workshop would disappear forever. I considered confronting Ethan. I considered confronting my father. But experience taught me exactly how that conversation would go. They would deny everything. My mother would defend them. The family would accuse me of creating drama, and somehow I'd become the villain. No, I needed facts, not emotions, so I kept digging. And eventually I found the one thing that changed everything. 18 months earlier, while working on a town preservation project, I'd started paperwork to have the workshop recognized as a protected heritage property. At the time, it had felt like a nice idea, a way to preserve a meaningful part of the town. I never imagined it would become important. Now it became the key, because protected heritage properties couldn't simply be demolished. And a workforce grant attached to the workshop required vocational programs to continue operating for 20 years, meaning any buyer would inherit those restrictions. No demolition, no luxury development, no apartment complex, no easy profit. The moment I realized that, I knew exactly what to do. The day before the birthday dinner, I completed every remaining document, personally, legally, officially. By the time the county office closed that afternoon, the protection was recorded, public record, permanent. The workshop was safe. My brother just didn't know it yet. Saturday evening arrived, and everyone gathered for my grandfather's birthday. The same smiles, the same fake warmth, the same family performance. Only this time I understood what was happening behind the curtain. My mother fussed over decorations. My father worked the room. Ethan carried a leather portfolio, the same portfolio containing the cream-colored folder, the same folder containing the deal, the same deal that was already dead. Dinner started normally. Stories, laughter, toasts. Then my father stood, a glass of bourbon in one hand, confidence written all over his face. He praised my grandfather, praised the family name, praised Ethan. Then he looked directly at me and said the words that would destroy him. Emma doesn't deserve to carry our family name. Silence. The room froze. I heard Ethan clap. 3 slow claps. Exactly like before. People shifted uncomfortably. Nobody stopped them. Nobody defended me. Nobody said a word. Then Ethan reached into his portfolio, removed the cream-colored folder, and placed it in front of my grandfather. Just a few documents, Grandpa. Nothing major. It'll help take some responsibility off your shoulders. There it was, the moment. The reason for the entire party. The trap. Everyone watched. Waiting for my grandfather to sign. Waiting for the deal to become official. Waiting for the workshop to become history. Instead, I quietly set down my fork and said one sentence. Before anyone signs anything, I think Grandpa deserves to hear the whole story. Every head turned. My father frowned. Ethan's smile disappeared. My grandfather looked at me. Then something unexpected happened. He stood, and suddenly the old, fragile man everyone thought they knew vanished. His back straightened. His voice became strong. His eyes became sharp. And for the first time all evening, he looked like the man who built Carter's Skills Academy 50 years ago. He picked up the folder. opened it, and began reading. Out loud every page, every clause, every secret, every lie. The room sat in stunned silence. My father turned pale. My mother looked horrified. Ethan looked like he couldn't breathe. When Grandpa reached the section requiring operations to cease, he closed the folder. Then he looked directly at Ethan. "You were willing to end this program for money?" No answer. He looked at my father. "You helped him?" Still no answer. Then he turned toward me and smiled. A genuine smile, the kind I'd spent my entire life earning. "Emma," he said, "tell them what they forgot to check." So I did. I explained the heritage protection, the workforce covenant, the public filings, the legal restrictions, the 20-year operating requirement, and finally the truth. The development deal is already worthless. The room exploded. My father shouted. My mother cried. Ethan panicked. But none of it mattered anymore. The paperwork had been filed. The workshop was protected. The sale was dead. And everyone knew it. For several minutes, nobody could accept what had happened. My brother had built an entire plan around one assumption, that nobody would notice. Unfortunately for him, noticing things happened to be my specialty. Then my grandfather delivered the final blow. 2 weeks earlier, without telling anyone, he had already transferred control of the trust, the workshop, the land, everything. To me, not Ethan, not my father, me. The room went silent again. My father looked shocked. My brother looked devastated. And for the first time in my life, neither one of them had anything to say. The development company walked away the following week. The deal collapsed. The workshop survived. Enrollment returned. Students came back. The program grew stronger than ever. My father eventually stopped visiting. My brother disappeared from management completely, and my grandfather spent the next year teaching me everything he knew about running the academy. Today, every morning at 8 o'clock, I ring the same brass bell he rang for 50 years. Students file into the workshop. Tools start moving. Lessons begin. And every time I hear that bell, I remember that birthday dinner. The night my father told me I didn't deserve our family name. Because in the end, he was right about one thing. A family name isn't something you inherit. It's something you earn. And that night, while everyone else was busy protecting their pride, I chose to protect something that actually mattered. The workshop still stands. The students still learn. The bell still rings. And that's how the story ends.